sometimes nightmarish urban legends are based on real events. Urban legends are terrifying stories usually passed down by word of mouth, so there can be numerous variations to the same story. While they might appear to be simple, spooky stories intended to frighten you, they were once used to teach lessons to the listeners. While some still do, as evident in this video, others are retellings of horrendous things that have actually happened. Here are 6 terrifying and real urban legends that will leave you wondering what else you've written off to be fictional is indeed true. So let's get to it. Number 6. Corpse in the mattress, the urban legend. Like most urban legends, there are several variations to this story. One tells of a couple who checked into a dirty motel while traveling across country. It was late and it was the only place in sight, so they tried to accept the foul stench in their room and go to sleep on the horribly lumpy bed. But a mere couple hours later, they woke up sick to their stomachs because the pungent odor had gotten so grotesque. When they went to tell the front desk of the horrendous stench and demand a new room, the hotel manager went back to the room to check for a source of the smell. He traced it back to the bed, and when he lifted up the mattress, found the rotting corpse of an unidentified man. The real story. The real story behind this legend is actually several, as bodies being found in and under hotel mattresses have been reported all throughout the country over the course of decades. While this urban legend probably arose because of someone hearing of an actual murder in which the body was hidden between the mattress and the box spring, and adding in and omitting some of the original details, it's hard to track down the exact case this is based on, since this version has been floating around since before the early 90s. Though a strikingly similar case did happen on June 10th, 1999, after the urban legend already existed. A couple staying at a motel in Atlantic City, New Jersey, spent the night in a room even though they reported a strange smell almost immediately after entering the room. The next morning, after the odor did not dissipate, the couple confronted the manager about it. That's when the hotel staff discovered the decomposing corpse of 64-year-old Saul Hernandez. So next time you're staying at a motel, maybe check the mattress first. Number 5. Phone call from the dead, the urban legend. A man died in a car accident on his way home. It was a dark, rainy night, and the crash took place on a lonely stretch of road around 10 p.m. Waiting for her husband to come home from a work trip, she grew worried when he was late. When she tried calling, he didn't pick up. When she was about to call his colleague asking if he had heard from him, she received a call around 12 a.m. from her husband. He said the roads were pretty bad and that he was going to pull over at a motel for the night. She told him to be careful and that she loved him before hanging up. The next morning, she heard a knock at the front door. Assuming he had forgotten his key, she answered the door expecting to find her husband, but instead, she was met with 2 police officers. They were there to inform her that her husband's wrecked car was found and that his severe injuries led them to believe he died on impact. Shocked, she told them he had called her around 10 p.m., but police said that couldn't have been possible as the hotel he was staying at reported he had left his phone behind in his room. The real story. Like most stories behind urban legends, this one is tragic and will leave the hairs on the back of your neck to stand on end. On September 12th, 2008, Charles Peck was traveling by train in San Fernando Valley, California, to see his fiancée after a job interview. While she and his family were on their way to pick him up from the train station, they heard a report on the radio about a commuter train colliding with a freight train in a terrible accident. It was the same train he was on. Almost immediately after the horrible crash, Peck's cell phone began calling his loved ones. His fiancée, brother, sister, son, and stepmother all received calls, but when they answered, they would only hear static from his end of the line. They tried to call back, but it would go straight to voicemail as another loved one would be called. Thinking he was hurt and unable to speak, the family notified the rescue team so that they could pinpoint his location in the mangled wreckage. An hour after the call stopped, and 12 hours since the deadly crash, they found his lifeless body, which they determined died on impact, but they never found his cell phone. Number 4. Silent murder in a library. The urban legend. A girl is murdered in a library while studying alone. While the library wasn't crowded, there were several other students scattered around with their noses in books as well. Libraries are known to be incredibly quiet, which makes them the best place to prepare for upcoming exams. And apparently, they are also a place where a murderer can find unsuspecting victims. As the legend goes, a girl was murdered while she sat at a desk reading over her notes. As the murderer slit her throat, she was unable to scream for help, so no one noticed as she sat there bleeding out, the pool of blood spilling over the notebooks and staining the pages. Her body wasn't found until after closing, when a security guard did a routine check of the library. The killer was said to have never been caught. Some even say the killer went on to recreate the murder in other university libraries across the country. The real story. Libraries have been the source of many ghost stories and urban legends, as there's something many people find unsettling about the dead silence and secludedness, especially when they're all alone. So it's no wonder spooky tales have them as the location, but this one is truer than most, and frighteningly so. Betsy Aardsma was a student at Penn State University in the late 1960s. One night, she chose to complete classwork in the university library, something several other students did as well that night. While doing research for a paper, the still unidentified murderer quietly snuck up behind Aardsma and stabbed her once in the chest. Though other students sat mere feet away at other tables and the murder took place in broad daylight, no one noticed the incident or could identify the killer, leaving investigators to speculate the murder must have been quick and silent. As she slumped over the desk, no attention was brought to her for several minutes, until an unknown man approached the front desk and told the clerk somebody better check on that girl before they exited the building. When library goers tried to administer first aid, they didn't notice she had been stabbed, as she wore a red dress that concealed the small amount of blood seeping from the wound. The urban legend and the true story match up very similarly, including the murderer getting away unseen. Number 3. Roller coaster scalping. The urban legend. This urban legend is short but gruesome and has been told to have happened at almost every amusement park in the country. A little girl with long hair was said to have gone to an amusement park, and she chose to ride a roller coaster that raises riders high into the air and drops them suddenly. Sitting on the outermost seat, her long tresses had blown in the wind and had gotten caught in the tracks of the ride while at the very top. Noticing this, she screamed for help, but her cries went unanswered as everyone else assumed she was screaming from fear of the impending fall. When their seats dropped, the amount of hair was too great to come out of her head alone, and she lost her entire scalp, reaching the bottom, bloodied and screaming. The real story. Terrifying as it is, this urban legend has a lot of truth behind it. On September 14th, 1996, Danielle Fauti went to Bonkers 19 Indoor Amusement Park in Weymouth, Massachusetts to celebrate her 8th birthday. Once there, she and a friend decided to ride the Mini Himalaya, one of those carousel rides that are on a circular track that travels at high speeds. Through a faulty gap in the back of the seat, the little girl's hair wrapped around a motor shaft and was ripped out of her head with such force that part of her scalp was torn off too. If that doesn't make you cringe during your next visit to an amusement park, several other stories of severe injury, dismemberment, and even death stemming from roller coasters can be found online. Number 2. Decapitation by elevator. The urban legend. There are a plethora of scary tales surrounding elevators. One such creepy story tells of a doctor who worked the midnight shift at an old hospital. As the elevators were known to be shaky, slow, and cramped, many people often chose to use the stairs instead. It was a common joke amongst the working staff that the elevator was going to cause someone's death one day. A joke that turned into a prophecy. One particularly slow night, a doctor had hurt his foot and didn't feel like taking the stairs. Once in the elevator, it slowly crept to his intended floor, but when it arrived, the elevator compartment didn't fully ascend before opening its doors. Pressing buttons trying to make the elevator move, he was met with no response. Assuming the elevator finally broke, he called out for help. Again, he was met with no response. Not wanting to wait around in the cramped space, he stuck his head past the elevator doors, hoping to get someone's attention. And just as he did, the elevator doors slammed shut around his neck and the elevator quickly descended, decapitating the man and leaving a bloody scene in the old elevator. The real story. This is an urban legend that feels like it's been around since the elevator was first invented, and for good reason, as fatalities from elevators have actually happened on more than one terrifying occasion. But this urban legend tells of a doctor being beheaded while at work, and this can be traced back to the real case of Dr. Hitoshi Nikaido, a surgical resident at CREEPIEST St. Joseph Hospital in Houston, Texas. On August 16, 2003, his colleague Karen Steinu stepped into an elevator that had been out of service for several days, but noticing the sign was absent, thought it had been fixed. As she pressed the button to bring her up to the 6th floor, Dr. Nikaido tried to rush to enter the car before the doors closed. Tragically, the sensors that prevented the doors from closing when blocked were broke, and they trapped him with his head partially inside the elevator. Steinu repeatedly pressed the emergency button to stop the elevator and open the doors, but due to faulty wiring, it did not work, and as the elevator ascended, the top part of his head was horrifyingly severed. As hard as it is to imagine anything making the situation even more terrifying, the severed part of his head went into the car with her, and as it ascended, the elevator stopped between floors, leaving her trapped in this nightmare of a scene as she waited for firefighters to rescue her. This terrifying and gruesome tale might make you want to take the stairs next time. Number 1. Harmful tricks and Halloween treats. The urban legend. As children who have gone trick-or-treating, an adult has been there to tell us the dangers of tampered candy. You might have even been told that they had heard on the news or knew of a kid in the next town over that ate their candy without looking and developed an excruciating stomachache some hours later, and when rushed to the hospital, they discovered a needle in their intestines. So with the possibility of being laced with poison, needles, razors, and nails, children were told to refrain from eating their night's loot of delicious sweets until an adult inspected the wrappers to make sure everything seemed safe and sealed. While maybe some suspiciously old or dirty candy pieces might have been tossed, these stories of finding potentially deadly hidden things seemed like an overly cautious tale. But there is a reason this urban legend exists, so take heed of its very real warning. The real story. While not common, there are in fact cases out there where children and adults were hurt by eating tampered with candy received while trick-or-treating. One specific instance occurred in Minneapolis, Minnesota on Halloween night 2000. 49-year-old James Smith was criminally charged for putting needles inside Snickers candy bars and handing them out to local children that visited his home for trick-or-treating. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, though when a 14-year-old boy bit into the candy, the hidden needle pricked him in the mouth, though he did not need medical attention for his wound. With Halloween just around the corner, please remember to not be impatient and inspect everything before putting it in your mouth. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. Now that you've heard 6 incredibly creepy urban legends and the real events they were based on, maybe now you won't be so quick to call the next spooky story you hear fake. If you enjoyed this week's dose of nightmare fuel, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you are notified when the next Halloween Fest video is up. To catch up on the previous episodes of this year's Halloween Fest, please click on the thumbnails that you see on the screen. Until next time, keep up the radness, and I'll see you real soon. Bye!